Hi everybody, my name is Marcos Cassiano, and I'm here to tell you about some of my tales from the road. Some of my adventures that happen along the highways and byways of the US and Canada, but never Mexico. This tale has to do with getting started in Brasilia, where I live now, and how I met some people and started networking. And it wasn't really that hard of a process, and kind of like what had happened when I decided I wanted to move here. I knew that I had to find some kind of job, to make a long story short, to get all this paperwork and everything ready to get my to be legal here in Brazil, because I am legal. And so I started teaching at this English school, because a neighbor of mine said, "Oh, if you want to find a job, they hire native speakers to teach at these English schools." And I never heard of anything like that, because as far as I know, this really doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, because when I've traveled to other parts of South America, I never see anything that resembles an English school, but they're almost like a dime a dozen here. So, like I said, a neighbor of mine directed me to this one place, and they hired me immediately. I guess they could see the potential in me. Just kidding. But anyways, while I was there, I met another teacher and a student right about the same time. The other teacher, he taught Spanish. He was from Chile, and he was a saxophone player. And this other guy was a student in one of my classes. And somehow we got to talking about music, because when you teach a class, you kind of try to find some common ground, because in order to get people to speak and feel comfortable, they have to talk about things that they're interested in. So this one guy was telling me, "Yeah, I've got this band." Well, he didn't say band. He says, "I work with this guitar player. We're working on a original project." And so I remember after the class, we went out to his car, and he played me some of his stuff, and I thought, "Man, this stuff's pretty good." I said, "Yeah, I'd be interested in helping you guys out." And so, because it was all original, we'd go to this studio about twice a week and rehearse. Now, what I mean studio is because here in Brasilia, everybody kind of lives in apartments, so they have all these what I call these little rehearsal studios, and there's quite a bit of them here in the city, and they stay pretty busy, and you book them in like 2-hour increments. Like if you want to rehearse at 8, you book it from 8 to 10, and they don't basically hire on the half hour. Like you can't say I want 7:30 to 9:30. It's like on the hour, and that's how they keep up with it. So basically, with most of the stuff I did was basically from 8 to 10, and so I would rehearse with them. We're working on original materials. I'd work out all the drum parts, and it was kind of fun, and I was hoping it would turn into something. And so, like I said, at the same time, I meet this guy Alejandro, a jazz saxophone player, and so I start gigging with him. We kind of hit it off immediately. He actually has some gigs, and I did some gigs with him, and he wanted to start like a jam night. He was really interested in doing some kind of jam night where anybody could come, any musician can come. And so I mentioned it to these guys on the original project, and they were kind of into it. They were a little hesitant, but they were kind of into it, And to do the gig, we didn't have to play a whole lot, but we learned some what I would call 80s Brazilian music, because back in the 1980s there was a big music scene here in Brasilia, and which just, from what I understand, just kind of died. But in the meantime, there were some bands that came out here, had some big hits. So we learned some of the songs from some of these bands to play at this jam. And I remember that, like, the day before the jam, the guys were like, we don't want to do it. And so they basically canned the project. They canned me. They were like, "No, we want to go in a different direction." Because prior to this, I was trying to talk them also into learning more cover tunes so we can go out and do some live shows. But it seemed like that's not the direction they wanted to go with, so we kind of parted ways. So I continued working with Alejandro, the saxophone player, until he finally moved. One day he calls me and says, "Hey, Marcos, I'm moving to São Paulo, and it's the end of the jazz thing, And so I even took Alejandro to the bus station to give him his send off to São Paulo. And so in the meantime, some other guy calls me, and he's got another project he wants to work on. His name was actually Alex. I think Alex Bustos or something like that. And we start rehearsing. You know, he wants to do some kind of a he called it like country, but we did some country, but we did a lot of Dire Straits, and we were working on some Eric Clapton songs. And we were working, things were going along. Of course, the process is slow because you're having to learn all these songs, and a lot of the people he brought in weren't familiar with a lot of this material. And so I remember it was around Christmas time. Alex says, "Hey, you know, let's take a break. I'm gonna go back home," because he wasn't from Brasilia. He was from another city. "I'm gonna go visit my parents, and when I get back, we'll resume the rehearsals." Well, Christmas came and went, and I never saw him again. And then I ran into a guy who knew him and says, "Yeah, I think he moved because I don't see him around the apartments anymore." Oh, okay. But in the meantime, when I was working with this guy, Alex, the guitar player, he kind of had a band also. So I remember his name, and I found him one night, and so I contacted him, and he says, "Yeah, I got a little blues." It was like blues, classic rock, and I went to his house and I auditioned. He liked the way I played, so I started playing with him for a while, and then another band called me around the same time. And it's like the band, it's called Cerrado, Kentucky. It's the band that I'm currently working. Now, what happened with the other blues band and why I kind of quit was at the time I had a little problem with tinnitus, which I have to this day. I've had it for about 30 years. And in the meantime, you know, I'm working with this blues band. I'm working with Cerrado, Kentucky. And I had a flare-up in my tinnitus. Well, I'm going to do another video on that. And so I just basically did nothing for a while. Not a long time. I don't even think it was a couple of months because I was itching to play. But in the meantime, I start back with Cerrado, Kentucky. Like I said, that's the main band that I work with now. And then through Cerrado, Kentucky, I meet this other guitar player in another band, and he calls the band Groove On. So currently here in Brasilia, what I'm doing, I'm working with a country band that does basically original Brazilian country music. And I work with this other group, Groove On, that does classic rock and blues. So that's where I'm at today in Brasilia, and I enjoy both because it's a nice contrast going from kind of like a country band then doing, you know, classic rock and doing blues. So it's a lot of fun, and it keeps me busy. So anyways, more later, and I hope you enjoyed the little story, and God bless everybody. Bye-bye.